Hello, this is Dr. Wendy Rowley of the Wonder of Human Design YouTube channel and the playlist series, How to Assist in Peace on Earth. Oh, I just can't grasp this title. How to Assist in the Creation of Peace on Earth. How to Assist in the Creation of Peace on Earth. Okay, let's see what Alienia has to say today. And I hope you're finding this fascinating and interesting and inspiring. Let's see what we get today. Oh, good day to you, dear beings of light. It is Alienia of Cosmic Service, Pleiadian Mother of Sound. Why do we go, ooh, when we come in? Because the pathway through to the voice, into the high heart and up, has a little bit of a boop when you land in it. And it causes a little bit of a, well, some people call them kriyas. It's a little bit of a, something coming in feeling. And it hits the voice box and it kind of makes that boop, here we are. So that's what that is, for those of you who wonder. All right, so this is, I believe, number 5 of 12. And we are going to continue with the information on what's on these different grids. Summation, if you're just jumping into this, we suggest you listen to it from the beginning to the end of the series because it builds. It has implied information, it has energy, it has activations, and they're meant to be done in a sequence. And it's meant to be heard in a sequence. But to give a recap, we know that through the peace path of the window of birth, before we enter the 3-day birth window, we have 3 different connections to large consciousness that reside out in the greater field: Gaia, the Christ evolutionary and healing force, and the divine intelligence force. And that the peace pathway has connections to the 3 higher self group spirit bodies that you all share and co-create in at the group level, on the human consciousness grid, in the interim Christ grid, and out in the greater field. And we learned that in the human consciousness grid, you have your golden Akash of your ancestral energy and your galactic golden Akash, your wisdom and information of what you learned in other planetary systems or what your ancestors learned while on Earth. And in the interim Christ grid, we know we have connection to the time capsules, our information of inventions and solutions and learning as we went through our great shift and succeeded. That's how we got here. And also the galactic highway information, which you kind of need to hear the information to understand that. So now we're going to cover what's on the Christ grid. What kind of information is on the Christ grid, and why don't we have a group higher self spirit body on the Christ grid? The Christ grid, or the soul mastery grid, is connected out in the greater field to your soul. And it has 2 avenues. One avenue is all the masters or ones that walked the planet and figured out the system and worked the puzzle and did their healing and evolution work and got their communions and figured it out. All the wisdom that they learned in that journey is put in the Christ grid. It's kind of like directions on how to find your way to source and out of incarnations, because it is a wheel. Talked about in Hindu. The information there is quite old, but it is talked about in Hindu and Buddhism and other ancient religions. The wheel of karma, the wheel of birth. And there is a pathway to get out of that. In Edgar Cayce and Rudolf Steiner's work, they talk about it being coming up out of the lower 3 chakras. And that's another way to sum it up. The way that we would sum it up is we would say it's a way to find the divinity within you, learn to work with it, and find out how to evolve with it. So that's kind of the direction set on that grid. At the higher level, the other information that is in that grid is the galactic enlightened highway planetary Akash. the Galactic Enlightened Highway Planetary Akasha. What is that? That is basically very advanced wisdom of planetary evolutions within solar systems, universes, galaxies. And there's even a word beyond that that describes something larger than all of that, that you are quite not have birthed into that consciousness yet. And it is a data bank of very advanced information on that level. So you can see, based on that, why there's no group healing, soul group, spirit body, higher self, group, higher self, spirit body that you all work and create within on that grid. Because it's very advanced information, it's very profound information, and it has to have sort of checks and balances in the system. Meaning that information cannot be corrupted by any other types of beings. That information cannot be corrupted by any other planetary systems, and that information cannot be corrupted by any groups that find their way into some advanced evolutionary levels but aren't creating an alignment with divine intelligence for the greater good of all. Because in your history on Earth, that has also happened. And they want into that information, but they can't get it. So it's a check and balance system of the information. So in the Akashas, on that level, your soul accesses them through the group higher self spirit body out in the greater field that you all share when you first come into the planet and hook into. And that means that you have to be very, very advanced to access that information. And that information, again, is percolated out by the Creator when it is time. So a lot of people feel, I got to get over to the Christ grid to get that information to evolve. You don't. It is something that is percolated forward through divine intelligence into the interim Christ grid spirit body for humanity when it is needed. And we just thought people should have an understanding of that, because it takes away a lot of pressure, doesn't it? When you start to see the beauty of the system, you start to realize that there's a lot of elegance in it, a lot of divinity within it, a lot of checks and balances within it, and a lot of potential there for the evolutionary process. It is a benevolent system. As much as you look out at your world right now and it looks very dark or very confusing and very potentials of war and a lot of killing and a lot of violence on certain media and certain movies, and it's kind of like not the way it really is. It's just a bump on the evolutionary road. So that's one way you can look at it, despite the fact you're in it. We're just in a bump on our evolutionary road that we will get through. And we need to have faith and trust in the system and in the Creator and in the divine intelligence we all are enmeshed within. So, in this understanding, there is the ability to still access the Christ grid. Now, wait a minute, that's a contradiction to what you just said. You just said we can't access it. But we did say your soul in the soul groups out in the greater field can access it. So what does that mean? That means that there's the potential for groups to sit together and mine the Christ grid Akasha in the future. Now, we're going to give an example of this one and we want her to know, we always tell her ahead, because she doesn't really like us to use her spiritual experiences or her soul's journey in our examples. And she recently did an interview with a lovely woman named Allie of, I think it's called the Barefoot Mystic, Wild Child Barefoot Mystic or something. She has a YouTube channel. And this one was happy to help women go forward, so she did an interview with her, and she was very afraid of opening up herself and explaining herself. But she created a paradigm where she exactly had that happen because she didn't let it flow. So she learned something in that. Allie, if you're listening, she learned something, and she says, I'll work with you again and be totally spontaneous. And she needed that experience because she saw another very, very well-established author and speaker do the same thing in a very, very famous podcaster's Spotify channel. And she learned from that and then realized she had done that in this other video. So there you go. And we just throwing that out there for people that listen. That sometimes it's very hard to do a free flow of information and be spontaneous. So we're letting her know we're going to use her as an example. So this one was told by both her last spiritual teacher, where she learned a lot about the spiritual anatomy in a school, 5 years she spent, and her very first meditation teacher. And she had an aha about it during the experience of realizing that she, in her trying to control an interview, she actually created the exact same paradigm that she was afraid would happen, which was her having to reveal her personal and spiritual self. So she thought in that time that it was very interesting that the last and the very beginning teachers she ever had in her search for the divinity within said the same thing to her. And they said, it is very rare for spiritual people to come together and do something together for the greater good. And that's a very surprising statement. And she hasn't had a chance to look at that energetically or contemplate that. But we're going to come out and say it, what it's about. It's because on the spiritual journey, there is something called spiritual competition. And it's part of the ego force. You have a little ego in front of your second chakra, just outside your spirit body. It's a little slightly golden ball. Women above that have their creative female energy. And in your fifth chakra, there's another little ego that's part of the creational energy. And that little ego is tied into the Akasha. So in all of the history where people were persecuted and killed and burned and basically afraid to be spiritual in the creational level, has blockages there. So it's not that people intentionally won't get together and work for the greater good. They get a little feeling inside them of anxiety, and they think, then I'm not supposed to create with that one. And if you've heard us talking about how the system moves over to benevolence through the Christ coming into the death bardo for the future evolution, that was the old paradigm where people decided what was best for them or not. Did that feel scary? Did that feel low? And maybe they shouldn't do it. So this blockage at the creational level of past Akasha, of being either killed or banished or abused for your beliefs, which you can see from your movies, was very big for a long period of time. We would say up until about the end of the 1800s. It's only recently y'all are moving into religious tolerance of each other. And as you can see, it's still a world issue by war. So that creational level with those blocks is only now starting to be able to be healed based on the Great Shift. So it's prevented people from being able to work together for the greater good. And so in the future, when you move over to the benevolent system of feeling in your spiritual nature, as part of the Christ coming into the death bardo, or the end-of-life incarnation bardo. We explained a lot of that in the series before this one that we mentioned in this series about how to align to the Christ in the new coming death bardo. You'll get a lot of information there for understanding about what we might be saying here if you don't understand it. But by bringing that Christ into the death bardo and bringing that alignment into benevolence in the future, when people of a spiritual nature who have spiritual gifts and can help each other will come together. There'll be a benevolent feeling. And we've also said there'll be, just in this one's lifetime, and probably through 2026, right into 2027, it begins, people at group events are going to have more positive reinforced spiritual benevolent feelings in those events. You're starting to see a picture here if you start putting those pieces together. So that ability to sit in the future as a group of souls and mine the Christ grid Akasha for information will be turned on. And it's going to be turned on in this one's lifetime, in your lifetimes. And it'll be turned on at some point when the Christ is coming into the death bardo in 2028, 29, and 2030. So that's another check and balance, but that is also something that evolves in greater group creation as you learn to create together in groups more, which is part of unity field consciousness, the evolution of unity field consciousness in souls and soul groups. So we just wanted you to have a larger picture of understanding. Now, this one, and she's reflecting on it right now, but she's actually picking up on what we were going to say next. The last teacher also told her that he sat with another man and pulled in a program that they used in that school, which was her favorite. It's also called oneness integration or one-to-one. It's when you get to sit with your soul and your higher self, and your body innate and Akashic innate can do work for you. It's a beautiful, beautiful system. It's part of the system. And it's going to get upgraded in the Great Shift. And she loved that because that's when you really get to feel the benevolence of your soul. So let's say you heal something, but your body innate can take your soul's forces from the interdimensional DNA in your central column and move them into the area you just healed, and it lets other energy or other people's energy or false information fall out because it's now filled with soul. And it's another aspect of healing, taking something out and putting soul in. It's like a complete puzzle picture. So he had told her that he and another man sat down and pulled that out of the Akasha. And she thought that was a beautiful thing. But that's a rare thing. It really is. You don't see many spiritual people getting together and doing something like that. Well, that's going to start happening more. Just from people hearing that, what we have to say, and this group that will come to these videos and listen to this over the next decade are going to start to realize to do that because they can do things together that they can't do alone. And that's part of co-creating in the peace path through the Christ healing evolutionary spirit body, through divine intelligence, out in the greater field, with the connection into the Christ grid that Supreme Being aligns to and allows to flow. So this is getting turned on, this is getting activated. It'll be online January of 2027. And you might want to consider, as a spiritual person doing juicy energy work, to work with other people doing the same and seeing what you could create together. And that's what we wanted you to know in this episode. Peace be with you. You are dearly loved. Expect benevolence in all you do when we bid you adieu.